Yeah, so we got a new Zelda game, and the critics seems to agree. 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, best game since Butter, and so on. But hold on, I disagree. This game certainly has an incredible charm and is also a clear departure compared to typical games in the series. Nintendo has taken Zelda in a new direction, and the fact that we now had the opportunity to play as Zelda is perhaps not the wrong step to take. Gone is the green hero equipped with a sword, shield and bow. Instead we get a character equipped with a wand and some new abilities, or more accurately, more abilities than we can count. But let's take it from the beginning. You actually start playing as Link, and it's really fun. We have seen it before and it feels familiar. The sword is your best friend, but you can also use ZL to target the enemy and then fire an arrow. The control is very good, and quite quickly I feel that this is going to be a very good adventure, until I start playing as Zelda. This is the moment when the game goes in a completely new direction and nothing is as it usually is, for better or for worse. It is certainly a completely unique game in the series, where Nintendo has truly dared to test new concepts. But the question is whether they succeeded. In the game, Zelda occasionally finds something called echoes. An echo means you can use an enemy's ability or learn how to handle an item. For example, you can spawn pots or place moving tiles. If you spawn a certain spider, you can climb the thread. Ignisol is a useful ability as it sets both grass and enemies on fire. You can also spawn beds where you can replenish your hearts or build bridges. However, this is ridiculous. In the middle of a boss battle, I need to refill my life. How to solve this? Well, spawn a bed and lie down and sleep for a while in the middle of battle. But in summary, you can learn a lot of abilities, which can lead to some experimentation, and being able to handle all abilities is, in my opinion, one of the main ideas of the game. But the problem is, it is a mess. Just look at this. Those are all the abilities I learned, and there are many. More than I can almost handle. To draw a parallel to Breath of the Wild, there you only had a handful of abilities that you could then use in a variety of ways. A little turned into a lot. In this game it's the exact opposite. A lot turns into almost nothing. Of all the abilities I have learned, I noticed that there are those that come back often. For example, I build many bridges with the beds. Sometimes I use the spider thread. And the movable tile is used extensively. And maybe it's the case that all the echoes have some kind of function in the game, but the majority of them just sit there and collect dust. And this is where it gets problematic. The design of the menus is a real headache. Let's say that for once you should use a less common ability, then you either have to scroll through the entire line of echoes or go into the menu and search. The problem is that you cannot customize. There should have been an option to be able to customize a menu with the most useful echoes. Unfortunately, there is no such option. Of course, you can choose how you want to see your row of echoes. Last used, most used, last learned, cost and type. But believe me, it's a small help in this context. Sooner or later you find yourself scrolling back and forth for an eternity just to find the echo you're looking for. When it comes to the game's plot and story, they had to sideline Link somehow. So in Hyrule there have been a number of scary rifts where humans are sucked in to either turn into stone or have a changed behavior. At the beginning of the game, Link is sucked into a rift and disappears. Zelda survives, but is herself banished from the kingdom as the king has also changed. He too was sucked into a rift. Zelda is put in prison and has to escape and clear her name. She is accused of being behind all the rifts. So now it's up to the player to tackle all the problems. It's a fairly simple but effective story. Mostly it's about the same thing. Somewhere a rift has arisen and now Zelda has to help. But what is fun is that you meet lots of exceptional individuals. We have met some before, but we are also introduced to some new faces. So overall, this is a pretty interesting story from a Zelda perspective. We are offered something new and it feels fresh. And now I want to show some things that I found fun in the game. You can spawn a wolf that is completely insane. Just look at this. The wolf is everywhere and literally shoots up the enemies. I love it when Luberry says, "What?" If you spawn an echo called Tornado, you can see how the enemies fly across the screen, quite entertaining. I also like the intro screen, it looks inviting. This crying Goron is funny, tears going up instead of down is pure humor. But if I'm going to highlight this game's great asset, it's all the puzzles, and there are many. The Dew team has really done a solid job of creating clever and occasionally challenging puzzles. It's almost like you long to enter a new cave and have to activate your own brain. Sometimes you have to combine some of your echoes to get ahead. Sometimes you have to come up with creative solutions to reach that treasure chest. In fact, there are so many different puzzles in this game that it contributes to some replay value. I can see myself replaying this game in the future just for the puzzles. They are entertaining and can force one to try different methods to find the right solution. Definitely an aspect that makes this an entertaining experience. But of course, you can also encounter lots of enemies and bosses, and here I think it becomes problematic, especially on the bosses. Zelda is basically inept as she has no sword or shield, which means she has to rely on her echoes, and it's like giving away the power to someone else. It's so boring to sit and wait for an echo to damage the boss. You can't control it yourself, and if you notice that an echo is bad, then you have to start scrolling for new ones. Yeah, back to scrolling. And this is a part of the game that ruins the flow. Finding the echo that is most useful can be a painstaking process. Should I use birds or a melee echo? Should I deploy urchins or bumpfish? You never know until you have tried the different echoes. And there are so many to choose from that it feels like it almost doesn't matter. You just take one from the pile. In the end, I would like to add that you can play as a Shadow Link for a short time, then you can use sword and bow, but only for a short time, before the meter runs out. I would also like to add that the bosses themselves are well designed. They usually consist of many phases where you're constantly exposed to a new test, so the bosses themselves are basically entertaining, but ruined by a constant search for the perfect echo. When it comes to performance, there have been many opinions about the frame rate. Digital Foundry has an excellent review of the game's performance, and I can't help but agree, it's not optimal. I did some tests myself and can state that it seems that some areas of the game suffer from a lower frame rate, especially noticeable in the overworld. However, it flowed quite well here in the water world and inside the dungeons. What surprises me the most is that Nintendo themselves release a product that does not have optimal performance. That is remarkable in my opinion, especially if you keep in mind Link's Awakening, a similar game that also had some frame rate issues. I wonder why Nintendo didn't fix all the potential problems this time. Anyway, while there are obvious issues with the frame rate, I'd say that I didn't really have any major issues with it, in general. Sure, it's noticeable at times, but I still don't think it affects the overall experience. I could still take it for what it was and play on. So, is this game worth $60? In my opinion, no. If it said $40 on the price tag, maybe. But 60 is too much. Okay, the good thing about this game is that the puzzles are entertaining and there is a rich world to explore. There are many small surprises scattered a little everywhere. For example, you may find a horse or encounter some unexpected or expected character. It is certainly not a small game that Nintendo delivers, but at the same time there are things in this game that affect the rating negatively. Above all, the amount of echoes is beyond all control, to the point that it almost doesn't matter, and it doesn't feel very rewarding, and this is where I think the game fails. Do you remember Link to the Past? I remember when I got the hookshot. It was like a great reward. Suddenly you got a fun item that opened up new areas in the game. You got to places that were previously unreachable. In Zelda Echoes, it's like there is total inflation with all items, and the value is low. Certainly, I found joy in completing a challenging puzzle or completing one of the game's dungeons or do some side quests, but it doesn't feel as fun as the rewards usually consist of food or something like that. And maybe it's just me, but I missed using only a sword and a shield. That's all. Do I really need 200 different abilities to be able to play a Zelda game? It becomes a little too much, but at the same time I can understand that Nintendo is trying to create something new and they should have all the credit for that. Basically, I appreciate them challenging their own game series and trying to come up with new interesting concepts. It's just that this time it didn't feel like they succeeded all the way. Not a bad game, but not perfect either. Far from it. So if you like exploration and lots of puzzles, then you should definitely check this game out. But I think the price is too high, $60, no thanks. I give it 6 out of 10. Feel free to subscribe to my channel and give the video a thumbs up. Have a good day. See ya!